You won't believe how extensive the cracks have become. One wife's happiness, another's quiet, and a father's reality that's turning everything around. Off stage, true agony is emerging, and the image of harmony is disintegrating. What if the love story we witness was never genuine in the first place? This one's close to heart. Jump right in now and watch what's really happening. You ever look at someone and think, that can't be the same person I used to know? The same face, the same voice, but something on a deeper level has changed. Like the script was rewritten and they didn't bother to let you in on it. That's the sensation creeping in for longtime viewers of Sister Wives. It's more than just a reality show now, it's a mirror. A story about family, faith, control, and what happens when the roles we've clung to for decades finally stop fitting. And at the center of it all is a man once praised for multiplying love, now standing in the ruins of the life he built, wondering why no one wants to share it with him anymore. Because off camera, off-puttingly staged scenes and cherry-picked smiles, a very different reality has been unraveling. And people, it's not pretty. Now, I'm not here to cast stone. We all understand that life is complicated, marriage is complicated, parenting is complicated. And when you're trying to do it all on television, with 4 wives, 17 children, and a production crew on your tail, well, perhaps we were always headed in this direction. But something shifted, something you could feel in your stomach. This wasn't simply a family falling away. This was a gradual, agonizing downfall. Wives walking away, one at a time. Kids backing off, establishing limits that a few years ago would have been unimaginable. And the man in the middle, Cody Brown, holding on to one narrative while the rest of the ensemble pens another. And then there's Robyn. For years, audiences couldn't quite place their finger on it. Some viewed her as manipulative, others as misunderstood. But recently, even the tenderest sympathies have begun to crumble. Because when you strip away the layers, see through the tears, the hushed tones, the strategically timed moments of vulnerability, what remains feels calculated, strategic, even isolating. The question isn't just what has happened to this family. It's who was guiding it all along in silence. And what do you do when the very ones you relied on for love, for loyalty, for legacy finally say, enough? That's where we are today. Christine's moved on and moved up, some might say. Janelle's considering her freedom. Mary's already backed away spiritually. And the children? They're talking more openly than they ever have before. And what they're saying, well, it doesn't paint the picture we were once presented. Aurora, Brianna. Even the little kids, they're not extras in the background anymore. They're front and center in a home where emotional tension and unrealistic expectations rule the day, particularly for the ones who are supposed to step up when the other adults have stepped away. And as Kody and Robyn continue to stake their claim as misunderstood outliers, reality simmering just below the surface is less easy to dismiss. Because what if that $1 million mansion wasn't a blessing, but a golden cage? What if the loyalty everyone keeps talking about isn't really about family but control? And what if just maybe the tears we've been watching for seasons weren't about heartbreak, but about losing influence? This isn't the same show it was 10 years ago. And it's not simply because the landscape shifted or the cast dwindled. It's because the masks are removed, the performances are unraveling, and the truth is finally being told, sometimes softly, sometimes all at once, but always with that unmistakable bite of liberty. We've heard Kody claim he never truly loved his wife, that only his relationship with Robyn had divine meaning. We've watched him rewrite his own past, while the rest of the family sits with the pieces he left behind. But here's the real kicker. If none of it was ever real to him, what does that say about the years the rest of them gave? What does it tell us, many of us viewers who saw a part of our own narrative in this one, who endured every heartbreak, every move, every cringeworthy family dinner, hoping maybe they'll figure it out? What if it was never figuring it out? What if the breaking apart was the point? And what does that leave us with now? With kids raised in an age where pressure and privacy get entwined, with wives that were once celebrated now silently taking back their voices, with a husband who once had 4 wives now trying to keep the one remaining, and with a woman Robyn trying to keep together something that already may be gone past her fingertips. This isn't another dirty family battle. It's the last installment of a tale we believed was one of togetherness, and possibly actually one of survival. So grab your cup of coffee, sit back, and let's go through it together, because the tale you believed you knew? Well, that was just the tip of it. Let's look closer. But I want to go to Europe. That one sentence, uttered in a moment of subdued rebellion, might be more true than any of the carefully crafted family stories we've heard until now. Because sometimes, a dream isn't really about escape, it's a sign, a soft scream that something is far deeper than wrong. What if that $1 million house wasn't a gift after all? What if it was a cage? Someone, most likely a neighbor or passerby, called the police. The family, once openly welcoming and prone to large parties, now raises suspicion merely by being together in public. The dynamic has changed. The tenders, those still emotionally or physically bound to Kody and Robyn, are now seen by many as a combination of pity and suspicion. And at the center of it all, Aurora. This is where things get heavy and personal. Aurora, young and already burdened with more emotional baggage than most adults ever have to endure, has allegedly been enduring panic attacks. Not just the occasional attack of anxiety, either 4 or 5 attacks per week. Rather than being shown a hand, allowed some rest, or given some privacy, she's been thrust into the spotlight, pressured to perform, pressured to smile, pressured to remain flawlessly composed under the unyielding eye of a camera. Now ask yourself this: who puts their most vulnerable child in the spotlight like that? Aurora's anxiety isn't being treated with care, it's being aired. Instead of backing off from shooting to protect her, she's being leaned into more. Her emotional pain has quietly become part of the content of the show. Her parents, Kody and Robyn, are somehow more and more absent when it comes to the actual lifting of emotions. For decades, the wives and grown children of the family did the lion's share of real work: childcare, emotional work, even simple logistics. But now, with Mary, Janelle, and Christine gone, no one is left to take that weight. So who's left to take it? Aurora and Brianna. This is where it gets all the more disturbing. Within that grand house, the so-called dream home, Aurora is allegedly living under tight, sometimes stifling, expectations. Anything less than absolute loyalty is betrayal. She's trapped to prove herself, perpetually juggling her parents' needs and reputation. And all of this playing out under national eyes. You may ask yourself, where's the love? Where's the concern? That's what fans are asking too. Because a person in such a vulnerable state of mind should never be thrust into the reality TV limelight. But Aurora isn't merely on screen, she's center stage. The theatricality of emotion, the shaking voice, the cutting camera, all of it contributes to a chilling image. A young woman exploited not as a daughter but as a pawn, a means of maintaining the family's brand. Now we come to money, because we always do, don't we? Kody's confessed as much. It's only possible to keep the mortgage checks coming by continuing to film. But enthusiasm for simply him and Robyn? It's running out quick. People aren't watching for a two-way echo chamber. They need the kids, the stories, the drama. And so it appears, the psychological well-being of the people involved is something he's willing to sacrifice. When you track the money, the reasons become more distinct and very sinister. That nice house, that so-called symbol of security, could very well be the reddest flag of all. Kody's willingness to provide lavish presents has long been cited as evidence of his devotion. But increasingly, those presents seem to be instruments employed in order to manipulate, to quiet, to rationalize his decisions. Let's stop at a moment which attracted everyone's attention. It was just a stupid family game, something that was supposed to be kept light. But Kody gave Brianna a fleeting flash of affection. A hug, a soft word. And Robyn? She altered her body language in the blink of an eye. Possessive, envious, like even her own kids were intruding into emotional space she reserved for herself. Fans took notice, and they haven't shut up about it since, because that sort of response says everything about the emotional climate in that household. And then there's control, isolation. Accounts indicate Robyn and Kody have limited the children's social worlds to an astonishing extent. Solomon and Ariella, little kids with a whole network of siblings out there, can grow up hardly knowing them. That's not an oddity of hectic life, that's a trend. Robyn's decisions, whether intentional or not, are shaping a closed, insular household, one where connections are cut, not built. And if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many viewers, especially those who've seen this kind of thing before, feeling the chill behind the smile. Now let's return to Aurora, because her story is far from over. There's a scene silent, hardly spoken, when she allegedly met a sibling while out in college. One meeting, one fleeting moment of understanding. But perhaps it initiated an entire new cycle of worry. Why? Because in a family founded on tests of loyalty, such self-sufficiency is not supported. It is punished. Hang around, because what comes next will make you wonder about everything. Aurora's anguish isn't diminishing. Far from it, what appears to be happening is that it only intensified. Those anxiety attacks we discussed previously, they haven't dissipated, and now there are indications the emotional stress is beginning to manifest in everyday life. She's shouldering a burden no young woman should have to carry alone. But what is interesting is that Brianna does not appear to be impacted in the same manner. She is more emotionally balanced, or at least less weighted down. A few fans have pointed out that Brianna always did appear to be slightly more detached, occasionally almost snobbish with regard to her step-sibling. Are these two daughters living under different expectation norms in the same household? That's what it seems like. And if that's the case, the emotional imbalance can account for a great deal of the building tension within Robyn and Kody's household. But let's change gears for a second, because this next bit, it revolutionizes everything. Christine didn't shatter Kody's heart. David did. That's the surprise most fans didn't expect. Since Christine's new boyfriend, David, entered her world, Kody hasn't been fixated. Not on Christine, on eclipsing David. From the moment they first met, the disparity between the two men was impossible to overlook. David openly discussed how much he adored Christine's grandchildren. And Kody? He couldn't resist the immediately chimed in to remind everyone that he is still the dad of little kids, as if being the younger father made him more current. But when your first instinct is to compete, what does that say about your priorities? And then came the ring. Christine and David announced their engagement, and her ring sparkled with happiness. Not long after, Robyn popped up with a new ring of her own. Coincidence? Maybe. But fans saw it as yet another attempt by Kody and Robyn to keep up. When Christine and David encountered the red rock trails of Moab on their ATVs, Kody and Robyn had their off-road debut. But their venture was not majestic views, but instead a muddy and uncomfortable one eat the lip of Coyote Pass. The contrast was clear, and it left most viewers with their heads shaking. Is this love or image? It didn't end there. Christine and David purchased a stunning home with a broad open view. Days later, Kody was seen chopping down trees to attempt to create a view from his own lot. The timing didn't seem coincidental. It seemed reactive. Another house purchase followed, not because they needed it, but because it appeared Kody and Robyn needed to catch up. But when love becomes a scoreboard, who actually wins? And competition was taken abroad. Christine and David went on a trip to England and Ireland. They even took some of the kids with them before their wedding. It was happy, spontaneous, and full of life. Then Kody, maybe feeling left behind, started discussing moving to Europe too. Sound familiar? Even the wedding created competition. Christine's was energetic, full of music and dancing. Kody's solution? He proposed a dance battle with David. Less celebration, more one-upmanship. Again. And when Christine and David made an astute financial decision purchasing a rental property, Kody appeared visibly disturbed. He had been talking about making that type of investment for years, yet never acted on it. This is where it gets particularly difficult to deny. David has a drywall company. He's been doing it for 40 years. He's got stable income, good work ethic, and something even more scarce, emotional maturity. And when he hangs out with Truly, Christine's youngest daughter, it's not dramatic. It's reliable. It's genuine. Truly appears relaxed and looked after. She's forming an attachment to someone who doesn't just say he loves her, he acts it. Kody, however, is largely nowhere to be found. But still, he won't relinquish his image of himself as a dedicated father. It's an odd paradox, battling for acknowledgement without appearing for the effort. And Christine? Doing just what a protective mother should do, keeping her daughter away from chaos and opting for calm over control. Kody's fights are not only with David and Christine, however, they are deeper. Years ago, he began backing away from the religious ideologies that governed his childhood home life. But his behavior, particularly toward his sonshas, replicated the very patriarchy he used to say he abhorred. And when Christine departed, he couldn't acknowledge that it was about her, her misery, her right to choose happiness. Noah had convinced himself there must be another guy. Because in Kody's universe, Christine could never, ever be the cause she left him. But perhaps that's the true heartbreak, not knowing that you were never the focus of her universe the way you believed you were. There is no doubt about it, divorce scars. And when it's not just a marriage dissolving, but an entire family tearing apart, that hurt cuts even deeper. Kody's been performing lately. He talks of love and heartbreak in the presence of camera. He creates this big scene in the snow, these impassioned debates. He recalls what he lost with the sort of anguish that Ring practiced, as if someone is trying to persuade not only others, perhaps even himself. But the point since you see beyond the speeches and grand gestures, there isn't much heat left, just space. And as he's acting grief, Christine's living joy in secret. She's not faking it, she's just joyful. She's traveling, reconnecting with loved ones, and standing next to a partner who attends in all the ways Kody never could quite manage. The contrast is impossible to ignore. But perhaps what hurts most is that Christine's joy comes so easily. Kody's responses, however, appear to be driven by competitiveness rather than remorse. Often, the person yelling the loudest in the room is actually the one working the hardest to remain relevant. And as Christine is forging ahead, the underlying tale is taking us backward to when Robyn initially became part of the scene. It wasn't an overnight thing, but it's obvious in retrospect. She didn't become part of the family, she transformed it, perhaps even brought it to a close. By season 3, the signs were already apparent. Robyn had a way of saying something that made everyone uneasy. Offhand comments about intimacy, inconsiderate jokes about intimate moments. Such comments as, "Do I turn around so you can kiss?" Or, "Do you want to leave so you two can lie on the bed?" They weren't cruel, but they weren't warm either. Just off, and always just enough to build tension. Those remarks did not come from the other wives. They came from Robyn, and they layered tensions onto moments meant to be mundane. And then there was the pregnancy speech. When Robyn told her husband she was pregnant, she gave a lengthy, tearful speech about how public intimacy must be difficult for the other wives to witness. Rather than a sense of comfort or belonging, it was more like a show. The other women said little, but their expressions said everything. Confusion, frustration, possibly even embarrassment. There's a distinction between sharing a moment and turning it into about you. Robyn would frequently broach subjects that other women preferred to leave unmentioned. Whereas most wives steered clear of talking about their sex lives, Robyn would press into them. She'd toss out sentences such as, "You don't usually go to coffee and talk about human sexuality," seemingly reminding everyone she was capable of speaking the words others would not. It felt more like a manipulation than an openness. And in a family founded on delicate balance, those moments counted. Sometimes power doesn't shout, it whispers. Even when Robyn made an effort to be helpful, something didn't feel quite right. Consider the moment another couple was shopping for a bed. Robyn made a joke that she could leave the room so they could try it out together. Meant to be flippant, sure, but it fell flat. More uncomfortable than humorous. More about getting noticed than being useful. And when you add up all those little moments, a larger picture starts to develop. Because Robyn didn't just introduce personality traits into the home, she introduced debt, lots of it. Debt that the entire family was expected to chip in on. And yet, never working a day in her life, she hired a nanny to care for only 2 children. That fact stings particularly when you recall that one of the wives had 7 kids to care for with no additional hands, and the other worked full-time to support her portion of the household. It's not about embarrassing someone for requiring assistance, but it's about justice. It's about what everybody else was sacrificing and what Robyn took for granted. She used to say, "I believe in living this lifestyle," but her interpretation of it had fewer sacrifices and more amenities. Was it awkwardness, or was it strategy? Because as time went by, what appeared to be innocuous little tics showed something more. Her behavior edged out important family members incrementally. Walls went up where there had once been bridges. And when those fissures at last burst wide open, the entire framework of the family changed. People talk a lot about family values, but what happens when those values are used to keep people silent? Hungry? Overworked? Or just plain heartbroken? That's not love. That's survival in disguise. Solomon was born at a time of great change for the Brown family. All were stuffed into a temporary rental home in Las Vegas, adapting to a new city, a new pace, and new challenge. Stress levels were already heightened between adults, among children, and within the family itself. And amidst all that chaos, Robyn and Kody figured it was time for one more baby. It wasn't a shock, it was a concern. They had 13 kids already. None of the grown-ups had stable employment. The money from the show was still fresh and far from secure. There was no actual financial safety net, no stable home life, no health insurance. Everything was precarious emotionally, practically, financially. And yet, rather than concentrating on stabilizing the family or providing more security for the children already in their care, they decided to grow the household. When times are tight, is adding more really love or something else? This wasn't an isolated misstep. It was part of a pattern known where adult decisions repeatedly appeared to value the appearance of family expansion over the actuality of family stability. Even years after, some of the older kids have quietly indicated there were periods when they went hungry, there was no health insurance, and still, the family was spending money on huge houses and huge purchases. So when the pregnancy with Solomon was announced, it's no surprise that some of the kids didn't respond with excitement. They responded with worry. Sometimes children notice what adults won't acknowledge. To be precise, this is not about blaming finger only at Robyn or Kody. Every single grown-up in the house, at some moment or another, went along with this same pattern. More children, more stretch, more stress. And yes, children are a gift, but they also have to have stability, security, and care. But Kody's family and leadership style hardly ever indicated balance. He did not lose his wives due to some great misunderstanding. He shoved them away step by step, argument by argument, and what's left now may be the best glimpse ever of who he truly is. Kody once declared, "Robyn is the only one left who gets to go along with me." At first blush, it sounds like partnership, but listen carefully, and it sounds a lot like possession. This had nothing to do with decisions made together or respect for each other. This had everything to do with control. Kody didn't present ideas to his wives to discuss, he presented them to win, like a used car salesman offering a deal he didn't intend to walk away from. In good relationships, both opinions count. In Kody's, only his did. This wasn't about agreement, this was about coercion, masquerading as self-assurance. We've seen it play out over the years. Kody builds a case, pushes his plan, and keeps pushing until he wears everyone down. Once he gets agreement, he often spins in doubt, needing the same wives he pressured to then reassure him he made the right call. It's not leadership, it's manipulation. And it's exhausting. Now, with 3 marriages under his belt, Kody is in a quieter home. But it's not necessarily a negative for him. Fewer mouths to argue with. Just Robyn. One point of view to overcome. When there's no one else left to battle. Is that peace or merely silence? Even now, in a little moment, you can catch the tone. When Robyn attempts to speak up for another wife, Kody cuts her off. Not kindly. With a directive, "Stop defending Mary. This is not partnership, it's performance." He no longer has a family life to boss around, no shift schedule to juggle, no emotional spats to referee. And without all that drama, Kody appears, sort of lost. The show is still on the air, but the facade of togetherness, that's been blown to kingdom come. And in the silence that remains, what's left could very well be the reality he never wanted us to know. We're adopting Brianna and Dayton, and now they're all ours. It was supposed to be a joyful moment, but when the kids are told their father has allowed them to be adopted by someone else, the look on their faces says everything. It's hard to watch. There's a quiet heartbreak there, one that might not be fully understood until they're older, when context starts to settle in. And when it does happen, it can be decimating. At times, what appears to be closure is really a more profound sort of hurt. That formal legal divorce for Mary and Kody? More than signed documents it signaled the start of the end. Now, in retrospect, Mary would have signed on for it as a desperate attempt to salvage their relationship, a leap of faith, an olive branch one last time. But rather than bringing healing, it validated what already transpired in secret. Kody had moved on, quietly, completely, and without glancing over his shoulder. When someone releases before you're prepared to let them go, it doesn't only hurt, it haunts. Robyn desired security. Kody desired liberty. And Mary, well, Mary desired love. But what she received was an exit strategy in the guise of second chance. And then Kody's admission, the one that shook fans to their foundation. "I never loved my wives." Suddenly, all those years of love should be multiplied, dissolved into something calculated and unfeeling. The whole premise of Sister Wives, the faith, the togetherness, the grand experiment felt more like a script than a calling. If the foundation was a lie, what is the family then? From the first episode, audiences were informed this was love, big enough to stretch 4 homes, 4 hearts, and a constantly increasing number of children. But Kody's recent words reveal the curtain. None of those early romances mattered to him in the least. Well, at least, except for the one with Robyn. He now refers to it as divine. The others brushes them aside like they were stepping stones. When a man reconstructs his history, The others who experienced it with him are left reconstructing their own realities as well. So what's next? Perhaps the most appropriate place to go back to would be to replay that very first episode. See Kody gush over how much he adores being in love. Watch him introduce each wife like she's a treasure in a holy quest. And then freeze and ask, was any of this real? The way he recounts it now, he was never fully invested. But he constructed the stage. He delivered the speeches. He declared it sacred. Now he's positioning himself as the misunderstood protagonist in a narrative he contributed to crafting. But you can't play the victim in a drama you contributed to writing. And don't look for any actual accountability. Kody's still in the show. And let's face it, the network's not going to be pushing him. They have a story to maintain and an audience to appease. He continues to have the platform, the airtime, the final word. The wives and the kids get left holding the emotional baggage for what's been lost. Shows such as Sister Wives were never really about faith or family. They were about tension, drama, and plain old ratings. Because peace doesn't trend but pain does. Whenever the narrative settled down, something or someone had to go and mess it up again. When things settled into too much stability, they added pressure, more tension. Another wife, not for spiritual growth, but for entertainment value, even when the family was broken, even when genuine heartache took hold, even when disaster hit. The story continued rolling, the camera continued spinning, because drama sold, and the more the family fell apart, the more the world watched to see what would happen. And Kody? If he never actually loved those women, if he never actually connected with them, then what in the world is he grieving? Not love. Not lost. He's mourning the life he used to dictate, the limelight, the format, the authority. Because when the narrative changes and the wives have a voice, the actual question isn't merely what Kody lost, it's what they finally discovered.